friends, Allie here. In today's tutorial, I'll be showing you how to crochet this wreath. This is actually a pattern I designed last year and I shared it over on a Crafty Concepts blog as a guest poster. I will link to that free pattern down below if you want to check it out. I wanted to make a video for this pattern as well though, as I've gotten a few questions about it. It's quite easy to make, but it's a little weird how it's done to get the curly branches, so I hope this video clears up any confusion. For this wreath, we will be crocheting around a metal ring. The original wreath I made last year, I used an 8-inch ring, but today I'll be using a 7-inch ring because that's what I had. You can use any size ring that you want though. This pattern is easy to adjust. You'll just need to work any even number of stitches around the ring, so feel free to use whatever size ring that you would like. This easy crochet wreath is perfect for the upcoming holidays. I'll show you how to add a little red bow on it and then you can hang it on your wall or door. But you could also add ornaments, or you can even add flowers or make it in different colors to use for different seasons or as a permanent decor piece in your home. Before we get started, if you want to follow along with the ad-free printable PDF, you can find it in my Etsy shop and on Ravelry, or you can find the free written pattern at acraftyconcept.com. Now let's head over to our supply list and let's get making. For today's tutorial, you'll need medium 4-weight yarn in 2 colors. I'll be using green for the main wreath color and you'll need about 51 yards. And then I'll be using red for the bow and you'll need about 5 yards. You also need a 5mm or H crochet hook, scissors, a yarn needle, and then a metal hoop. We're going to begin by attaching our green yarn to our hoop. So I'm going to start with a slip knot on my hook. And then I'm going to slip stitch to the hoop. And now we're just going to work our round of single crochets all the way around our hoop to set our base for our wreath. So insert your hook under the hoop, grab your yarn, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both loops on your hook. So there's 1 single crochet. So we're going to repeat this around for my hoop. So I have about a 7-inch hoop. I'm working about 110 single crochets around. So if you're using a different size hoop, just work any even number of stitches around. You just want to work enough that the metal is not showing between the stitches. So you want your stitches close enough that the metal isn't poking through. So I'm just going to repeat this around. I'm just going to single crochet all the way around the hoop until the metal is not showing. For me, that's going to be about 110 single crochets. So I just finished single crocheting all the way around my hoop. So you should have an even number of stitches around. I'm going to join to the top of the first single crochet with a slip stitch. And then we are going to start our branches. Now you can adjust the length of the branches by chaining a multiple of 3 plus 1. So for my first branch, I'm going to chain 10. Now working down our chain, we're going to slip stitch into the second chain from the hook. Then I'm going to chain 4. So it's going to create this upside down L shape. Now I'm going to slip stitch back into the base of that chain, so into the first chain that we started that 4 chain in. So now we have this little loop. Now we're going to skip the next 2 chains down our original chain, slip stitch into the next chain, chain 4, slip stitch into the base of that chain to create another little loop. Then we're going to skip the next 2 chains down our original chain, slip stitch into the next one, chain 4, slip stitch into the base of that chain to create another loop. So there we have our first branch. Now going down to round 1 to our single crochets, we are going to skip those last 2 chains and then slip stitch into the next single crochet around the ring. So there we have our first branch. I'm just going to give it a little twist clockwise. That's just going to help curl it a little bit. So there we have this kind of messy, curly little branch. And now we're on to branch 2, which is just going to be slightly shorter. So for branch 2, we are going to chain 7. So working into the second chain from the hook, we are going to slip stitch, then chain 4, slip stitch back into that same chain we slip stitched to. There's our little loop. Skip the next 2 chains and slip stitch into the next. Chain 4, slip stitch back into the same chain we had originally slip stitched to. There's another little loop. Skip the next 2 chains and slip stitch into the next single crochet around our hoop. So there is our second branch. So now we're just going to repeat those 2 branches all the way around. So if you want to make different lengths of branches, you can adjust the lengths of them by chaining a multiple of 3 plus 1. So you can make them any length that you want. But I'm just going to repeat these 2 all the way around. And it's just going to create this kind of messy, curly branches all the way around. So I'll show you each of them one more time. So we're going to chain 10 for our next branch. Slip stitch into the second chain from the hook, chain 4, slip stitch down into the base, skip the next 2 chains, slip stitch into the next, chain 4, slip stitch down into the base, skip the next 2 chains, slip stitch into the next, chain 4, slip stitch down into the base, skip the next 2 chains, and slip stitch into the next single crochet. So there we have a longer branch. Now we'll make the shorter one again. So chain 7, slip stitch into the second chain from the hook, chain 4, slip stitch into the base, skip the next 2 chains, slip stitch into the next, chain 4, slip stitch into the base, skip the last 2 chains and slip stitch into the next single crochet. So we're just going to repeat those 2 branches all the way around. So when you're done making all of your branches, you can just join with a slip stitch to the bottom of the first branch. Then I'm going to cut off my yarn, leaving a long enough tail that I can weave it in. So I'm just going to weave in this end, and then I'm going to clean up my branches so it doesn't look so messy. So I'm going to kind of twist up my branches. So I want the bottoms of my single crochets that I worked to be on the inside of the hoop, and then the branches are on the outside. Because while we're working them, they twist around the hoop a lot. So I'm just going to try and get them all facing the same way, and then we can kind of clean them up. So I'm having it so the bottom of the single crochets are on the inside of the hoop, and then the branches are poking out. So you just got to twist them around until they're all the same way. And then once you clean it up like that, I'm going to push all the branches in, kind of fold it in so that half of them are poking on the inside and half of them are poking on the outside. And there it looks a little bit more like a wreath. So I'm going to stop here to make the bow, and then after attaching the bow, we can kind of clean it up a little bit more. So if you want to grab your red yarn, we will start making our bow. So we're going to start with a slip knot on our hook, and we are going to work a foundation single crochet row. So that's working our foundation chain and our first row of single crochets together in one. If you'd rather, you can work a foundation chain and then single crochet back into it after. So to foundation single crochet, we're going to chain 2, then insert your hook into the second chain from the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first loop on your hook. There we just created our foundation chain. So remember where that is because we're going to work back into it for our next one. Yarn over, pull through both loops on your hook. There is our single crochet. So we just worked those two at the same time. Now for our second one, you're going to insert your hook into that foundation chain we created, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first loop on your hook. There we created our second foundation chain. Yarn over, pull through both loops on your hook, and there we created a single crochet. So we're just going to repeat that for a total of 50 times. So we want to work 50 foundation single crochets. I'll show you one more time how to do it. So insert your hook into the last foundation chain you created, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first loop on your hook to create the next chain, yarn over, pull through both loops on your hook to create the single crochet. So just keep repeating that across for a total of 50 or until you get the length of the bow that you would like. So here is my finished foundation single crochet row. So I worked a total of 50. Now I'm going to cut off my yarn and I'm just going to weave in both of the ends, and then we'll make this into a bow. So now we're going to turn this into a bow. So I'm just going to tie it as you would a shoelace or anything like that. So starting on the right side, I'm going to make a little loop and then wrap the left side around it. It's kind of hard to explain how to do a bow. But once you get it started, you can kind of play around with it to make it perfect. So you just want to try and get both of the loops about the same size and then have the two bits hanging down to be about the same size. So I'm just going to kind of play around with mine until I get it sitting how I would like. So this is looking pretty good to me, so I'm going to now sew it onto my wreath. So you can put your bow wherever you'd like. I'm going to place mine on the bottom in the center. Feel free to put it on the top or the side. You can do with it as you'd like. So I'm going to grab a strand of green yarn, about 6 to 12 inches long. You just need it long enough that you can tie the bow to the wreath. So I'm just going to grab the back of the bow. So you're not going to be able to see this green yarn on the front of the bow. You're going to attach it to the back. And then you want to place your bow between the branches. And I'm just going to sew it through to the single crochets from the first round. And it's just going to be all tied at the back. So you're not going to be able to see this strand of yarn. So you just want to grab from the back and just secure it well. And then you can weave in those extra bits on the back. And there we have our little crochet wreath. So now you can kind of play around with the branches and get them sitting how you want. You might need to spread them apart. You can have some poking out on the inside and outside. You can just kind of move them around until you get them sitting exactly as you want. You can also add a hanging loop to the top if you're going to want to hang it on a wall or your door, or you could just put it right on a hook. And there we go. Thank you so much for following along. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so you're notified as soon as a new video is up. You can also find more free crochet patterns on my blog, theturtletrunk.com. If you want to share photos of your finished creations, you can tag me at theturtletrunk on Instagram and Facebook so I can see them. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.